Deb, we always start Leadership on Main's with a little music. And for your Leadership on Main, we have a little surprise. We are going to have some live music from Michael Strauss from the Urban Troubadours. He's going to play a little bit for us.
Oh, great. On my instrument.
So Michael, I'll ask you to start, and I'm going to actually start admitting everybody.
Okay.
Bravo. Thank you so much, Michael. That piece definitely had to be heard by all of us. As several people have already said, what a great way to start the morning with some live music. And a couple of reasons we did that. First of all, our guest today, Deb Yandala. Deb, we understand that you actually play the viola and played with the Cleveland Philharmonic Orchestra at a time in your life. And thanks to Nicole Mullet, who reached out to Tyler and suggested some live music for Leadership on Main. And so thanks again, Michael, for being with us this morning. I believe you have a piece for us at the end of the morning as well. So we'll look forward to that as well. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to Leadership on Main. A little fall in the air this morning, and certainly makes us think about hiking and being outdoors and fires and all the good stuff that fall brings. So no better day to talk about the gem in our community, the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. So before we get into that conversation, just a couple of announcements. We kicked off our signature program this past week. We had the opening retreat out at Hale Farm. So that class enjoyed the beautiful outdoors at Hale Farm, lots of space to spread out. Steve Ash, Carla Davis facilitated the opening retreat, and just a great start for our signature class. We'll kick off the Junior Leadership Akron program this weekend. We'll be out at the Akron Rotary Camp. We'll have about almost 50 juniors in high school who will join us for that. And then we'll come downtown on Monday, do some hikes and walking tours of the city, and kick off our Junior Leadership Akron program. And then next week, our Diversity on Board program will begin on Thursday. We have 14 individuals who are in that program, and we're excited as they begin their journey of becoming active board members in the community. So a lot happening. And then just also wanted to mention that next Thursday, we will have our new executive leader reception. We'll be introducing 30 new leaders in the community who have taken on senior level roles. both within the for-profit and nonprofit community. Hope you'll join us for that. It will be 5:30 to 7 o'clock next Thursday. And we'll have a chance to meet everyone collectively, and then we're going to put you in small groups so you can interact with those leaders and have conversations and welcome them to Greater Akron. So hopefully you can join us for that. You can register on our website. So let's move on to today's program, and we are just thrilled to have Deb Yandala with us. Deb is the CEO of the Conservancy for Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and just a tremendous supporter of the parks, and they make a huge difference in our community. We all know parks have been such a valuable asset as we've dealt with the pandemic and just that place of refuge and a place to recharge. So Deb, we appreciate what you and your organization do. And to modify or moderate the conversation today is John McKenzie. John was on the board of the Conservancy for a number of years. He was also co-chair of the Leadership on Main Committee up until this past year, and was also past president of the Alumni Association. So John, thanks for arranging to have Deb as our guest today, and I'll turn it over to you to continue the conversation. So thanks again.
Thanks, Barry. Good morning, everybody. I am really thrilled to introduce you, if you don't know Deb, to Deb Yandala. As Barry indicated, she is the CEO of the Conservancy for the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and has been the CEO of that entity and or predecessor organizations for about 18 years. So Deb, I think you and I have known each other for probably close to 20 years at this point, and have really developed a great friendship. And I loved working with Deb when I was on the board for many, many years of the Conservancy and the Environmental Education Center. Essentially, if you don't know, the Conservancy is the friends group, although I'm not sure that term does it complete justice, of the CVNP. And due to Deb's leadership and working with the National Park Service and her staff, she has really allowed the Cuyahoga Valley National Park to shine, both locally as well as on a national level. Deb serves on the board, or has served on the board, of the National Park Service Friends Alliance, which it's a national organization, and she'll tell us a little bit more about that. And in addition, this year, Deb was named one of Crane's 2020 Women of Note. So congratulations on that, and we're pleased to have one of Crane's 2020 Women of Note with leadership background today. Deb, I thought I'd start off, and this is going to catch you off guard because we didn't plan for this, but I want to play Do You Know? So did you know that 400 years ago today, September 16th, 1620, the Pilgrims left England on the Mayflower? And when you think about the idea of a pilgrim, a person who journeys to a sacred place, typically for religious purposes, but a person who journeys to a sacred place, I thought I would ask you initially what you might share with us about your journey to the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, which for some, especially during this COVID timeframe, as Barry alluded to, has become a very sacred place. So could you tell us a little bit about your journey to the park?
Thanks, John. First of all, for my first comments, I do want to say thank you to Michael. The Bach 6 suites transcribed for viola are helping get me through the pandemic. So both playing them and hearing them. So that was really, really a treat, and big supporter of live music. Yeah, if you had asked me as a child, would I work for a national park or with a national park? I grew up in Cleveland, the east side of Cleveland. I would have said no, that was never in the plans. But I did grow up on the shores of Lake Erie, and as a child was very impacted by pollution in Lake Erie. When we first moved to Cleveland, I was able to swim and take swimming lessons in Lake Erie, and within a few years that was impossible. And as a child, it seemed to me very odd that we couldn't swim in a body of water. So water pollution and water always have been kind of a big issue for me. I also think of the Cuyahoga Valley as a child. My grandparents lived in Akron, and this is going to date me, but I know a few of you are going to relate with this. This was before I-271 was built, and we used to drive old Route 8 down to visit my grandparents in Akron. My grandfather was a lifelong Goodyear employee, since the day you graduate from college, he took a job with Goodyear and worked there his whole career. We'd drive old Route 8 through the old Virginia Kendall part, and as a kid growing up more urban, I loved that area. Would I've ever dreamt of working there? Absolutely not. But I did find that I fell in love with teaching. I thought I'd be a history teacher, but I worked as a camp counselor and discovered the magic of environmental education and teaching kids in the outdoor setting. I went on to graduate school in environmental education at, excuse me for this, but at the University of Michigan. Ended up back in Ohio and back to Northeast Ohio as a trailing spouse. Again, never anticipating that I would end up in Cuyahoga Valley National Park. But a graduate school colleague had just been hired by the Park Service to develop an environmental education center. He knew I was in the area. He called me. I was hired to write curriculum and then ended up being the director of the center. We merged the center with the Friends group, and I ended up heading up the Friends group. So just things kind of happen like that sometimes in life. Not necessarily planned, but all fitting in kind of in blocks in my life.
Wonderful. One thing that's always struck me about you as a leader of the CVNP, or the Conservancy for the CVNP, and you and I've talked about this, is what a great speaker you are. You always seem to be on top of the subject. It seems effortless, it's substantive and relatable. And I was wondering whether or not you've worked hard at that. Did you decide at some point in your life that, you know, being a speaker extemporaneously or otherwise, you know, was important to leadership roles? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
From my very first job, I recognized that the public speaking is a part of any leadership role. I feel fortunate, again, as a hobby musician, not as good as Michael. As a hobby musician, I got used to being in front of audiences, so that part wasn't as scary to me as it is to some people. But I'll also admit this, my first jobs were in a church camp setting, and that meant every Sunday morning I was out speaking, and that was part of the job. And like so many things, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. And what I quickly discovered is that if you're passionate about what you're speaking about, it's very easy and very natural. You're just telling your friends, and I know I look at the list of people here and so many people I know here, you're telling your friends about what you're passionate about. And I am so passionate about parks and the role of parks in people's lives and how healthy it is mentally and physically to be outside in nature, that I find public speaking one of the easier tasks that I get to do as part of my job.
Did you happen to take on leadership roles? You mentioned when you were younger in the church camp, sounds like there were some leadership roles there, or were there other leadership roles or important roles early in your life that you felt helped groom you to be the leader you are today?
Thank you. It's a great question, especially as you think about those of you that are younger leaders. I was very fortunate. I came through a system that really believed in leadership development and in enabling young people to be leaders. I'm still passionate about that work. I think people that are in high school and college and just out of college are as competent leaders as those of us who are older. They just bring different perspectives. So I was lucky to be able to be placed in leadership positions on boards at a young age. I really encourage you, if you're a young leader, get engaged in the community, get on the board. There's no better way to learn about being a leader than by being a leader and watching and paying attention to other leaders around you. When I was first out of college, I became very active in our state network, the Environmental Education Council of Ohio, and then in this role, very active in the national network. And that networking and being able to learn from peers, I think, is one of the best things you can do. It's why I'm a staunch supporter of Leadership Akron and Leadership Cleveland and what all of the leadership programs have done for Northeastern Ohio.
Can you tell us a little bit more about this, the leadership roles that you've taken on a national stage?
Yeah, you know, when I first started in this work, I still found when I said I was with Cuyahoga Valley National Park, people said, where's that? What's that? How do you pronounce it? There's a national park in Ohio, and that encouraged me even more to become involved and engaged. And I'm really proud of all the things that we've been able to do, and it's definitely a we, it's board members, our staff team, and the community, is we've really elevated Cuyahoga Valley National Park to a national level of excellence. We're known as one of the top partnership parks in the country because of our ability to work with the community. The Conservancy is one of the largest friends groups in the country. We're always listed in the top 5, and I love when they talk about it because they talk about Golden Gate and Yosemite, Friends of Acadia, Conservancy for Cuyahoga Valley National Park. We're right there. And that's in part because of the things we've been able to do, and also because our community just so loves this park. So we're one of the largest in terms of number of staff members. We're one of the largest in terms of the money we raise for our national park. And we're one of the most active in terms of the ways we as a Conservancy support the park through education, retail, leasing spaces, making them available to the public, certainly fundraising and community engagement. So Cuyahoga Valley National Park is nationally known in national circles in the national park system. We just got ranked in one survey, you know, in the top 10 for watching fall color. That happens pretty consistently for us. And yet I still find people in Northeast Ohio say, we have a national park, and where's Cuyahoga Valley National Park?
Yeah, unfortunately that happens, but I would suggest to you, and you probably agree, that during the pandemic, more folks have found our national park tucked in between Cleveland and Akron and other surrounding communities. Would you agree?
Yes, we've actually been dealing with crowding in Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And I know probably some of you have tried to go there and go to your favorite trails, and the parking lots are full. The Park Service has been trying to adjust where they can, but it's been an issue, and yet we're not complaining because, you know, I especially think as we get into the fall and the winter, it's going to be more important than ever for people to be able to be safely outside of their homes. And I also love that people are connecting with what research has told us for years, that being in green space is one of the healthiest things we can do, not just in a pandemic. There's been a lot of research done on youth and youth learning and what it means for them to be in a natural setting. So while it's been a bit of a challenge, it's a challenge we welcome.
That's great. Hey, Deb, can you tell us a little bit about, you mentioned all the different folks, you know, kind of that you're working with in terms of, you have park partners, but you have a pretty large staff as well. So how would you characterize your approach to leadership, you as a leader, and then maybe I'll tag on to that, has that changed at all? Or if so, how has that changed at all in light of 2020 and the pandemic?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. It's, you know, I was schooled early on in the concept of servant leadership, and that has served me well in my career. My graduate school advisor was world renowned for his work in global environmental education and global health, and he was as humble as they come. And I watched his effectiveness in creating change because he truly cared about all people, was committed to the preciousness of every human life. And I so share that approach, which means when it comes to staff, every one of them is as important as anyone else. And the people we serve, ultimately, that's what we're here for, is to make the world a better place. And I try not to have much ego in the business because, frankly, as a leader, it is about the people we serve and the people who do the work on the ground. I have had to learn to be bolder in my leadership, if you will, because of this philosophy. I tend to like to be behind the scenes. You know, we work with the Park Service, and I have to really lift up the park and the park superintendent. But I've been encouraged by others to be more courageous and bolder. And I find, especially now in this pandemic, where our organization has taken a hit, like many nonprofits, we lost about half of our income, just came to a sudden halt. Our work in education stopped. Our ability to, we had 100 weddings booked in the national park, and most of those canceled. So much, it's been really a hard couple months. But that takes leaders willing to speak up, to be there, to be present, to encourage others, to make sometimes really hard decisions. It's easy to avoid the hard decisions at times. I think I have developed maybe I don't want to say harder, that sounds negative, but I want to say it in a way that is more positive, a stronger willingness to be upfront and speak out and share philosophies and try to lead to what I think is most important in this pandemic, and that's that we put care for people first, safety first. So if people object about wearing masks or limiting our number of people in facilities or our requirements for social distancing, so be it. And I'll say this, John, the hardest decision I had to make was we had reopened our visitor center and I closed it. I closed it down because our staff were in the store in the visitor center and the Park Service federal government would not allow us to require masks, even when the state required it. And I called the superintendent and I said, I cannot put visitors and I cannot put our staff at risk. And he agreed, but he couldn't change the rule. It came from much, much higher than him. So we closed it. Now we reopened it last week. So if you want to, we've been able to change our messaging and change the way we're managing. But that's the kind of hard decision leaders have to make, caring for our people first.
Tell me a little bit about, you know, in your bold way, how do you and the board of the Conservancy tell us a little bit about how you prioritize and what are your current priorities? What is your current work in the park look like? What's rising to the top right now?
Yeah, it's a great question too. And our board has worked really hard. Our executive committee met every 2 weeks throughout all of this and really refocused on what are the values important to us. And those values are around making the park safe and accessible for people. They're around producing quality experiences for people, making sure that people are safe. And we've especially been working in the last few years on an initiative around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that has really risen to the top for us. And actually that work started several years ago because we recognized that our park visitation based on 2015 survey was 95% white in a broader regional population base that is only 65% white. And we knew that needed to change. And frankly, that has risen even more to the top as we've looked at health disparities. We really believe that parks, all parks, not just the national park, but metro parks, city parks, these are democratic places and all people should be welcome and should feel a part of that. So we've been really working at our staffing, our volunteer model, our marketing approaches, our vendors, our sourcing across the organization, how we continuously send the message that our national park is a park for all people. And I know Summit Park, Metro Parks, city parks, we all share that philosophy that all people deserve to be welcome in these natural spaces. And that for us is a real driving priority in our work.
Since you hit on diversity and inclusion, can you share with everybody the story you told me, which I really was unaware of, and about the actual roots, so to speak, of Cuyahoga Valley National Park and the role that kind of equity played in that?
Yes, thanks for asking that one too, because I love to tell this story and I wish we told it more over the years. This is something we've really failed at. So there are some remarkable people that, and some of them I know are on this part of this video, who have really helped to save Cuyahoga Valley, the valley. And at the time they were saving it, they probably weren't thinking national park. What they've said to me is, we didn't care. We just wanted to protect it. And that was mostly women, local women from garden clubs who led bus tours through the park to say this is a remarkable valley and needs to be preserved. So that's part of the story, is the role of women in our national park. The other part is, at the same time, the National Park Service, like every other federal agency, was trying to work on ways to better connect their work with our urban cores. So those of you old enough to remember the 1960s, others have read about it, you know that our cities had a lot of challenges. There were riots, there were lots of unsettled issues around civil rights. And in the National Park Service, the way they wanted to respond to that was to say, we recognize that not everybody's going to get to Yosemite or Yellowstone or Glacier. We need to have some national park units that are closer to the urban population, and they need to be recreation. So they called them national recreation areas. And there were 3 of them that were established in the early 1970s, us in 1974. So Golden Gate National Recreation Area in San Francisco, Gateway National Recreation Area in New York City, and Cuyahoga Valley National Recreation Area between Cleveland and Akron. So it's, in many ways, we really come out of that civil rights movement. It's part of the DNA of this park, that it's a park for all. It's a park that people should be welcome for recreation. And in our work, we've discovered there have been some barriers. If we don't hire more rangers that are persons of color, if our staff isn't more diversified, our board, our leaders, our volunteers, if we don't have programs that relate to a variety of cultures in Akron, we're missing the boat on that. So that's something our organization is really trying to address, and appreciate the support of the community as we've tried to do this.
We've touched on the priorities for CVNP and safety and security, and obviously the importance of diversity and inclusion. What else can you tell everybody about the work of the park, the work of the Conservancy on behalf of the park, for those who don't know what the organization really does to support the National Park Service and our park?
Well, our biggest role over the years has been in education, and I'm really sad that that has really ground to a halt. We run a residential learning center. Nobody's sending children to dorms, programs in dormitories right now, and even field trips have been put on hold because schools don't want to put kids on buses. So in the meantime, the staff that we were able to retain in education are working at connecting the park virtually with students and with teachers. And we will continue to develop programs. We just announced a new online program called Cuyahoga Connections that's aimed at families and teachers of young children. We are doing some limited getting people back into park buildings, doing it in a safe way, socially distanced. So if you're looking for some small event space where you can be outdoors part of the time or in larger buildings, we make that available to the public. All of our retail stores are open. Our trail mix stores in Boston and in Peninsula, and now in the visitor center as of last week. We also advocate on behalf of the park and fundraise on behalf of the park. And our fundraising is to support some of the work we do connecting with urban youth especially, but it's also to help restore and protect historic buildings in the park. And most recently, we are working on a major land acquisition. I bet many of you know about this. We are in the process of purchasing the Brandywine Golf Course, and that's 206 beautiful acres. And right now in a study process to determine the use of that property. It is right along the Cuyahoga River. It's very, very precious property. And I think as we look into the future, we will be looking at more opportunities to make sure that we're protecting land, that we're providing support for our park staff for research on the property, and protecting the great historic resources of the Cuyahoga Valley.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask you what the status of the old golf course was. So instead, I'll ask you about your work with the other friends groups. As we have the railroad and the
countryside,
the farms. Can you tell us a little bit about your work with the other friends groups?
Yeah, these are 2 other nonprofit organizations that work in support of the national park. And Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad is, you may have seen the news, it's opening October 1st. You might have, it's been fun to hear the train in the valley again. They've been doing some practice runs and charter runs and training their volunteers and new protocols. And then the Countryside program operates the wonderful, wonderful farmers market in the Cuyahoga Valley on Saturday mornings. And even more important, provides the liaison to help with the farms. And there's 13 farms in the park that have been restored back to their historic use with real farmers. We didn't want to have pretend farms in the valley, but go back to the real history of the Cuyahoga Valley, which was the breadbasket for Cleveland and for Akron. As park partners, we work very closely together. We do planning, we meet together regularly. What we do is in support of the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, but also in support of the community around the park. And then there's many other partners that we work with. We're great friends of Blossom Music Center, Old Trail School, the ski areas. There's lots of wonderful things in the Cuyahoga Valley, and then also in support of the communities, the Village of Peninsula, all the retail opportunities in the village, the Merriman Valley, Cuyahoga Falls. These are all great partners with us in creating a wonderful asset for Northeastern Ohio, but also an asset that is more and more being recognized around the region and even nationally. We are really seeing an uptick in tourism tied to Cuyahoga Valley National Park.
Before I ask this last question, which will be a little bit open-ended, I will ask the audience if they have any questions to please press, Tyler, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the raise hand button. And Tyler will then share your questions with Deb after this last question. So Deb, I'm just going to kind of open it up and ask you about anything you'd like to share with the group in terms of your leadership of the Conservancy or your leadership journey that I haven't asked you about.
Well, you've asked such great questions, John. I think quickly about what I haven't shared. I'm fortunate that I'm working my life's passion. I'm really fortunate. And I really encourage others in your leadership, whether it's through your paid work or through your volunteer work, is, find what means a lot to you. We are so dependent on volunteers and on having a really capable board. I know some of our board members are present today. And I think then also connecting in the greater community. I was really honored to be part of Arts Now on that board for a number of years. The arts community so needs our help and our support. And as environmental organizations, we're really a part of that network. There are many other fine organizations in Northeast Ohio. And we are gifted in this region with very talented leaders. And for those of you who are my peers out there, I learn from you all the time too. I think my family lived in Akron for a number of years, and I love the Akron community. It's almost a hidden gem as a community, the amount of resources. And John, if I could tell just one little quick story. When we first moved to Akron, I moved a little bit kicking and screaming. I remembered it as the Akron of my grandparents, and I wasn't sure if it was for me. And then one day, within a few weeks after we moved there, I realized that I was 10 minutes from downtown Akron with all the wonderful arts opportunities and wonderful things going on in Akron, and 10 minutes from a national park. There is nowhere else. I guarantee this, knowing the national parks, there's nowhere else in the country you can say that. And we in Akron ought to be very proud about that and very proud about what we provide for our residents here in this community. So to all of you who are younger leaders, be a champion of this city. It's a wonderful place to live and work.
Thanks, Deb. Well, Deb, I always enjoy spending time with you, and I always take away a couple of nuggets of good wisdom. I want to thank you so much for sharing part of your morning and sharing the Conservancy and your journey with this group. And then I'll now turn it over to Tyler. Tyler, did you come up with any questions?
Yes, actually, but first we're going to ask Demetrius Falconer if she could ask a question here.
Sure.
So, spotlight.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Debbie. So great to hear you.
Thank you.
But I wanted to know, what is the relationship between Cuyahoga Valley National Park Conservancy and Camp Mueller these days?
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks for asking that. So Camp Mueller is owned by the Phyllis Wheatley Association, which is based in Cleveland, and it's located within the national park. There's an easement on the property, but the physical ownership is by Phyllis Wheatley. We've done some collaborative programming with them over the years. Their programming has really slowed, and I understand, like many nonprofits, they've been hit pretty hard in this pandemic, and actually have a meeting coming up in a few weeks with their director. We are really interested in protecting that property. It's historic, and for those of you that don't know, it historically was the only Black owned and operated camp in the state of Ohio, and that may still be the case. We will monitor our relationship with them closely if they get to a place that they cannot retain ownership. Conservancy will step in. We really value that property and would love to see it retained as a resource, especially for the Black community. I can't tell you the number of times people in Cleveland come up to me and say, that's my camp. That's where I went as a child. I love that property. So we are very committed to protecting that property and protecting its history.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Deb, and thank you, Demetrius. We have Mark Auburn, with a question. Mark?
Good morning, Deb. Thank you so much for your great leadership. Can you speak a bit about the return of live performance opportunities within our national park?
Thanks, Mark. We had to cancel most of the live performances we had over the summer, just like everybody else. But we also recognize that we're in an outdoor setting. So we are having conversations in our program staff, among our program staff, about how to bring those back, probably not till next spring or summer when we can be outside and socially distanced. But we'll look at winter. We'll look at what, we have to follow CDC guidelines and the Restart Ohio guidelines like everybody else. And we do have some larger facilities. So we're studying those as we speak. I can about guarantee there will be something by next summer. Whether there'll be something sooner is kind of yet to be determined and depends on safety and health. We still recognize that people don't want to be inside.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark, for the question. We had a couple questions come through in the chat. So we had one from Sandy Auburn. She asks, can you still camp in the park?
Unfortunately, right now the campground is closed. We had a very small campground behind the Stanford House, and that is closed. So right now the answer is no, but trust me, that is a topic of great discussion.
Perfect. We got a few more questions here. Let's see. What are you, Pam Hicks and Stephen asked, what are you recommending, Powell?
I'm sorry, the question, what am I recommending? I'm seeing it on the chat.
That was a typo. Go to the next one, Tyler.
Oh, okay. What are you recommending for reading these days?
Yeah, reading. Well, I always am deep in a couple of books at any one time. I'm always bad at recommending specific books. I, like most everybody, are reading lots of books about being an anti-racist. I just finished that book because I'm part of a book study on that. Excellent, thought-provoking book. I'm also reading another book about the Great Migration, which has been really, I love history, and it's been very informative to me, especially related to settlement in the Midwest. There's some great books, new books out there around environment, and I love poetry, so I always have a book of poetry by my side.
Perfect. We had a couple more here. Let's see. Cynthia Capers asked, what are 2 to 3 highlights of the visitor center?
Yeah, we're only having the downstairs opened right now, so I'm going to really focus on the downstairs of the visitor center. And I think a couple highlights there is if you walk into, not that come to the retail store and support us, but then walk into the next room over and you'll see some beautiful maps and pictures of downtown Akron on one side and downtown Cleveland on the other side. We really are trying to impress on visitors that the valley lies between these two cities and that they have the opportunity to spend time in the park, but also get into Cleveland and Akron. It's a pretty stunning mural and representation of what it means to be a valley in 2 urban areas. Once the second floor opens, I will tell you, we have a wonderful poetry board where you can create your own poems. It's designed for kids, and adults love it more than the kids. So you will come back when the visitor center completely opens and sees that. And then I hope that you'll take a look at the pictures. We used photography and area photographers to help to really interpret the park. And please come and look at, you'll see one of the things I think that's great about the photography is most of them have people in them, because that's what our park is about. It's people and nature together.
Perfect. Thank you. Mary Outley Kelly asks, can you share more about how people can volunteer? Can youth groups volunteer? And is your board appointed? 3-part question for you.
Great. Yeah, so there are a lot of volunteer activities not happening right now. We're trying to be really safe with our volunteers, but there are a few. And what I suggest is go to our website, forcvnp.org, and go to the volunteer page. You can contact the volunteer office. And yes, historically, we've had a lot of opportunities for youth groups to volunteer. We have over 5,000 volunteers in Cuyahoga Valley National Park. We're one of the largest volunteer programs in the national park system. So we're really proud about that. Again, some of those activities can't happen right now, but go to our website, connect with the volunteer office, and they will help connect you with work that is happening. Our board is elected. It's elected by the board. We are very careful to have, it's not appointed, it's elected, it's a nonprofit, and we are very careful to have a balance with Akron and Cleveland people, all ages, all backgrounds. We really want the board to represent leadership in Northeast Ohio.
Alrighty, then we had a question from Janice Radel. Is John Deebo still in contact with the Cuyahoga Valley or Conservancy for the Valley National Park?
Yes, John is an icon himself around Northeast Ohio for his wonderful years as our superintendent. After he retired from the National Park Service, he moved over and worked for 10 years for us. We allowed him to retire in January. After 10 years, he wanted some time to travel and be with family. He's actually been visiting a daughter in Oregon this last week. Think about that. So he is still in contact, still in connection. He and I talk regularly. He is still very supportive of us and engaged. But we're also recognizing he's really enjoying life now too. So apart from work, but he will love Cuyahoga Valley National Park forever.
Fantastic. And then the last thing I'll actually ask for you today is we are raising donations today in honor of the Conservancy. So Deb, could you just tell us a little bit about how these dollars can have a direct impact at the Conservancy?
Yes, you know, right now, as I mentioned before, we've been hard hit with having to stop education and stop our earned income sources. So your support of the Conservancy will help us continue in our outreach and will help us continue what we can do with connections with schools to keep especially families and children connected with Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And so any support you all give us, we will use it to help strengthen the work that we do in outreach, especially to the Akron community. And thank you so much, because we very much appreciate your support, and I hadn't been expecting that, so thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Deb, and thank you, John. I really, guys, appreciate you taking some time out of your day and welcoming us this Wednesday and starting our day off very right. I know everybody here appreciates the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, me especially. That was just something that I held very near and dear during the quarantine, kept me sane, kept me feeling great. So I really appreciate the work that you guys do every day.
Much.
So I do have a couple announcements here for you guys. So as you can see, I did link the donation button in the comment sections, but if you would like to check it out later on, let me show you where you can do that so that you can donate to the Conservancy right here, as well as we have a few of the later Leadership on Mains coming up at the end of the month. Next month, we do have Don Drum from Don Drum Studios and Gallery, one of Akron's own. And then the second thing we would like to highlight is, as you guys have probably known, the golf outing was canceled this year. But we'd still like to provide the opportunity for you guys to connect and socialize with your classmates. So if you go to the News and Events tab, you can go to learn more on the golf outing, and there are golf outing packages that will be available till the end of the month that will be valid through October 31st of 2021 for you and a few others to gather and go for a few rounds of golf. And finally here, we will turn it back over to Michael Strauss to play us out at the end of today's event. And we will ask, it looks like he is warming up here. We're going to ask him to unmute, and we will enjoy some classical music to start our Wednesday.
Thank you all. Thanks, Deb.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So Deb, actually, I have one more question, if I could, if you don't mind.
Oh, go ahead.
So as somebody who's deeply ingrained with the parks, what would be your favorite? I know I have my personal favorite is Whip's Ledges. Do you have a favorite place that you like to visit?
I love the Oak Hill Trail. That's my favorite trail in the park. It borders the education center, so there's a little bit of bias there. But yeah, I just, it's a wonderful hike, and the beauty of it, it's not a hard hike, but it's really beautiful. And going back, you know, towards the Hemlock Ravines back in there is just stunning to me. But you can't choose a bad hike in Cuyahoga Valley National Park.
Definitely. Well, it looks like Michael is all set to go. So Michael, thank you again for joining us, and I will ask you to play us out.
Sure. This is a Telemann solo suite.
Wonderful.
Oh, Michael, I almost didn't want you to stop. It's a shame that we have to go to work this morning. That was beautiful. So I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day.
My pleasure. And Deb, thank you.
Thank you. And now everybody knows how wonderful the viola is.
All right. Thank you,
Never
everybody.
stop.
Appreciate you all. Hope you have a good morning.
Thank you.